Hello, my name is Dan Keating and I am co-owner of www.procurementpal.com. As an introduction, at Procurement Pal we're always trying to support SMEs, the backbone of any economy. In the UK alone, in 2018, 16.3 million people were employed by SMEs in the UK, and it accounted for over £2 trillion in revenue and contributed to 60% of all private sector employment. Our mission is to allow SMEs to have leverage on their key resources by providing information and software so they can attain more value in their business. If you require any more information about today's video, please add comments and questions below. You can also contact me directly on any video at dan@procurementpal.com. Today we're going to talk about standard deviation and how it's used in regards to forecasting, inventory management and using it to build a desired service level for your business. There's no reason that any of the techniques that I'm going to talk about can't be employed in both a B2C and a B2B arena for both products and services. Many companies spend a lot of money on software to assist them with forecasting, error measurement and inventory management, but you don't have to spend thousands to get it right. Everything in my videos related to forecasting and inventory management you can do using a pen and paper or at its most complex, Microsoft Excel. So in other videos we have looked at different types of forecasting such as moving average, exponential smoothing and holt-winters trend and seasonality. In all those examples we use the error measurement of standard deviation to determine which smoothing constants to use to achieve our most accurate forecast. In the next example we're going to use standard deviation, which is probably a term you're used to, this time to use it to determine what stock holdings have to get a desired service level. When using standard deviation we must recognise that inventory is made up of two core elements. One, the forecast for the next period, which is our best assessment on what we may sell or consume. In the example I'm going to show we'll be simply using the mean demand as a forecast. And two, if we're using the mean as a forecast, intuitively we know that that forecast is only going to be enough stock 50% of the time. So the second element of inventory management is there must be a bit of stock to buffer the demand above and beyond the forecast, known broadly as safety stock. So if we look at our standard deviation spreadsheet right here, we can see the same demand data that I use in pretty much all my videos on inventory management. Periods will be in column A, so we've got P1 all the way down here to P105. As stated before, that period can be weeks, months, days, etc. I've hit a few columns here, so don't worry too much about that. You only need to see these columns for the purpose of this example. So mean is calculated here in AT2, that's just taking a mean of all this demand data, and standard deviation here is in AU for all that demand data. Hopefully the mean doesn't take too much explanation to understand how that works, but for standard deviation, presumably you've come across this term before, but just in case you haven't, it's calculated as follows. You essentially work out the average of this demand data set going down here. For each number you subtract the average and square the result. You work out the average out of all those squared differences and take the square root of that number. Or do what I do and just use your standard deviation formula in Excel. It's much simpler. Don't worry too much about this standard deviation increments table. That's just there to calculate the distribution curve, so we don't need to worry too much about that. However, graphically we have a distribution curve for this data set. So again, intuitively we can say that if we stock the average amount, which go back here is 15,002, we stock the average amount at the top of this distribution curve, for a period of time we'll have enough stock 50% of the time. So for instance, some months I've gone over that, or some periods I should say. So in period 19 I had a demand of 15,720. That is obviously above the mean. If I'd have just stocked that forecast, i.e. that average consumption, I would not have enough stock to service the market. What we're trying to achieve by getting the standard deviation figure is an understanding of how spread out the numbers are. So in this example, our mean is 15,002 and the standard deviation 2,117. And that's where adding safety stock comes into play, and we can use our standard deviation figure to add safety stock. For instance, just say that I want to increase our service level for our company from 50%. I want to increase it above that, so I have options. And we can look at the safety factor table here to calculate that. So by adding one standard deviation here, I will increase service level from 50% to 84.13% by adding one standard deviation. This isn't something I've dreamed up, but it's pure statistics to come up with, and these numbers you can find them from a number of different sources. And we can use our distribution curve here to see what that looks like graphically. Adding one standard deviation here would take us to around 17,200, which you can see back on the table, the safety factor table. Sorry, it's 17,120. So graphically you can see what adding one standard deviation would do to add 34.14%. So 50 plus 34.14 is 84.13%. By adding two standard deviations to a product, we can move the service level up to 97.72%. Again, you can see that graphically and what that means. So if we stocked 19,238 items of that particular product, our service level would jump up to 97.72%. I've actually worked in organisations and consulted for organisations that target a certain delivery performance or service level from their company, but they have no method in terms of how they're actually going to deliver it. So this is a simple method for you in order to take service level into your inventory management process from a statistical perspective. The beauty of this technique and others that I will show in videos like this is you can strike a balance between working capital in terms of inventory levels and desired service levels. To that end, one of the most usual things I hear in a business, mostly from commercial people, is that we must deliver 100% of the time. Well, let me tell you that that is actually statistically impossible to plan for that. And secondly, you have to tie up an awful lot of cash to reach those levels, so it's not ideal. And in its purest form, that's what inventory management is about. It's about striking a balance between tying up cash and getting to a certain service level. So let's show that graphically. We can say that if we go to one standard deviation to get a service level of 84.13%, you need to have one standard deviation, and to get to 99.99%, it's four standard deviations. In absolute terms, this means pushing the inventory level from 17,120 pieces to 23,474 pieces. A difference of 6,354 pieces. So we increase the inventory by 37.1% to get an extra 15.86% service level performance. This is exponentially increasing the inventory. This is why a lot of companies target around the 95% service level because they know they have to pay a lot of money to go higher in terms of inventory and improve service. So let's pretend a company is selling product A, and this is the demand pattern for it. The cost is £25, say, per item of one of these items, and the team wants to get to 99.99% performance because they want to exceed the offering of the competition. As an operational person, we can work out the cash flow impact by tying up more cash in the inventory to achieve that level. I can't tell you the right answers, but can help you give you some data to make the right operating decisions. As you can see from the graph below here, stock projection versus service level, at 95%, the stock level would need to be 18,497 items, or in cash terms, £462,000. By increasing the service level up here to 23,474 items to achieve 99.9% service level, the stock holding pushes to £586,000, in excess of that actually. This equates to an extra 27% of inventory to get less than 5% service level performance. So the question I always ask is is that cost worth getting from this point to this point? Only you can answer that question. So, in conclusion for this video, the pros and cons of using standard deviation as a tool for inventory management and safety stock specifically. Pros, as you can see, this is actually a very simple method to execute. You can adopt a safety factor using this table here to hit desired service levels, so it's good from that perspective. The cons, it uses the average as a forecast, which is, as you'll see from my other videos, is not the most accurate of measures in which to forecast. For instance, it doesn't take any account of something like trend or seasonality. And if you're going to plan to use something to get the right inventory levels, it doesn't take into account service level from production, it doesn't take into account service level from suppliers, and it doesn't incorporate things like lead time from production and suppliers as well, so it discounts those. If you'd like any more information on standard deviation or inventory management in general, in association with www.procurementpower.com, please ask any questions below or get in contact with dan@procurementpower.com. Remember the motto: master the fundamentals and keep it simple. We'll now show a promotional video for Procurement Power to follow this video.